Hi, subscribe to Revenge Tale not to miss new stories. Deep within the turbulent seas of human connections lies the tale of Chris and Martha Harrington, a profound narrative encompassing love, betrayal, and the intricate road to separation. Chris, upon discovering his wife's infidelity, embarks on a clandestine game of revenge and strategy. Martha, a successful attorney, finds herself entangled in a battle of intellect, where every decision carries its own consequences. This story challenges the concepts of personal morality, the strength of forgiveness, and the timeless struggle between emotions and rationality. It delves into a world where every step taken can lead to unforeseen outcomes. On Thursday afternoon at 4:10, as my phone buzzed, I braced myself for the message that awaited. Although I already knew its content, I couldn't resist taking a look. It was indeed from Emerson Burke, my private investigator. The words confirmed what I had anticipated. My wife had been served with divorce papers. Martha Harrington, a woman who played various roles in life, from being a wife, mother, sister, and daughter to a respected senior partner at Willington & Compton, a prestigious law firm in Hartford. Among her duties as a senior partner was managing the workload of 7 junior partners. She conducted mandatory meetings every Monday at 10 o'clock and every Thursday at 4 o'clock. These meetings always began punctually, and anyone arriving late felt the full force of Martha's displeasure throughout the entire session. The sheriff who delivered the divorce papers interrupted the Thursday meeting precisely at 4:02, per my instructions. "Mrs. Harrington, your husband is seeking a divorce. You've been officially served." After 23 years of marriage, I knew Martha all too well. She would undoubtedly feel a profound sense of humiliation being served in front of her subordinates. However, despite the anger brewing within her, she would not hastily rush home. Instead, she would lock herself in her office, where, as a skilled attorney, she would meticulously examine every word of the divorce petition. I anticipated that the initial reading of the legal documents would leave her somewhat confused. I had cited the classic irreconcilable differences as the reason for our divorce. Martha would breathe a sigh of relief that adultery was not listed as our grounds for separation. Nevertheless, she would suspect that I was aware of her long-term affair with Michael Kinsley, a married 29-year-old associate at her firm. She would also likely find herself perplexed by the division of our assets. We would be dividing the profits from selling our expansive 7,300-square-foot home and our beachfront summer residence on the Connecticut coast. Martha would retain her retirement savings, while I would keep mine. Bank accounts and checking accounts would be split after paying off any debts. Since we both earned substantial incomes, there would be no need for alimony. Yet, when she reached the end of the legal papers, Martha would be bewildered to find that my highly successful third-generation engineering firm was not listed as an asset. She knew my divorce attorney by reputation and had even recommended her to a few friends in need of similar services. Martha often referred to my attorney as a shark. Thus, she would be utterly stunned that someone held in such high esteem within legal circles would be careless enough to omit any mention of the business. I knew she would suspect foul play but remain clueless as to its nature. After a second thorough reading of the petition, ensuring her secret lover's anonymity, Martha would call for an emergency meeting with her most trusted partners and associates. Together, they would scrutinize the papers and devise an initial strategy to confront me. My name is Chris Harrington, and I first crossed paths with Martha at the University of Connecticut. She was a second-year law student, while I was completing my PhD in mechanical engineering. We began dating only a week after meeting and swiftly became exclusive. On our third date, as we strolled back to the car after a delightful dinner, Martha suggested, "Chris, let's go to your apartment." We spent the entire weekend making passionate love. Our sexual relationship was extraordinary. We firmly agreed never to involve others in our intimate lives, vowing to remain faithful and exclusive. We officially solidified these pledges during our wedding ceremony, which occurred a mere 2 weeks after both of us received our advanced degrees. Our wedding was a grand affair, held in Martha's hometown of Portland, Maine. The reception took place under elegant tents on a warm, clear summer night, along the picturesque rocky coastline. Following our wedding, we honeymooned in Aruba, returning with not a trace of tan lines. Martha had interviewed with several prominent law firms in the Hartford area prior to her graduation. 2 weeks after our honeymoon, she received a job offer from Willington and Compton. Over the next 2 decades, our love for each other grew deeper as we navigated the joys and challenges of raising our 2 remarkable children, while simultaneously managing our careers. I assumed control of our family business when my father retired 12 years ago, acquiring his shares. Meanwhile, Martha's career skyrocketed. She became a junior partner at her law firm after 7 years and earned the title of senior partner during her 16th year there. Life was going well until that letter appeared 3 years ago. An anonymous message arrived at my office, addressed to me, with the words "personal and confidential" written at the bottom. Inside the envelope, I found a folded piece of notebook paper that revealed my wife's affair with Michael Kinsley. In the photo enclosed, they stood together at the doorway of what appeared to be a motel. Determined to gather evidence, I hired a highly recommended private investigator. Within 2 months, we uncovered a grotesque amount of proof of Martha's infidelity. Following another month of careful planning and pretending to be a loving and devoted husband, I assembled my team. This team included my PI, a divorce attorney, my business attorney, and my personal accountant. I outlined my desires and made it clear that it would take some time to set everything up correctly. Their responsibility was to ensure that each step I took was legal and couldn't be used against me in our divorce proceedings. The second text from my PI arrived just before 6 o'clock that same afternoon, informing me that Michael Kinsley had been served. 2 weeks prior, my investigator had met with Rachel Kinsley and shared the results of our 3-year investigation and the substantial evidence of the affair between our spouses. Rachel recommended her divorce attorney, who eagerly took on Martha's case. I assumed any plans concocted by the group at Willington and Compton to combat my divorce petition were rendered useless, as Michael's wife had already listed adultery as the reason for her own divorce. Her petition included the PI's report, photos, and videos, an extensive and damning package. At 8:10 that night, the garage door rumbled. 4 hours had passed since Martha was served, and I silently wondered if my meticulous 3-year plan would overcome her defensive strategy. Seated at the head of our dining room table, I poured Martha a glass of her preferred red wine, placing it in front of her chair. As I heard the door from the garage open, followed by Martha's voice calling out, I took a sip of slightly chilled bourbon. She entered the family room, then checked my office and the living room before finally appearing in the dining room. Martha glanced at me, surveyed the setup, and settled into the chair at the far end of the table. After sitting down, she reached for the glass, toasted me with gratitude for the wine, and drank deeply. Several moments passed before she spoke. "I don't want a divorce," I responded. "I know. And I don't want a deceitful wife, Martha. Let's discuss this as adults." She countered, "Yes, I've had an affair, but I'm not a deceitful person, Chris. I'm sure you've told me countless times that only a coward would cheat on his partner." I didn't need to mention the substantial evidence I had of Martha's infidelity, the countless instances where she had betrayed me over the years while denying me any similar pleasures. I could sense Martha's desire to lash out. Her face was flushed, and she breathed heavily through her mouth. I observed as she deliberately tried to compose herself. "Why did you have to destroy Michael's family? He has 2 wonderful children who now won't have their father at home." Suppressing a laugh, I shook my head and calmly replied, "Have you seen Rachel Kinsley? She's absolutely stunning. Her kids will soon have a different father at home, one who I bet won't be as prone to cheating as your lover." I paused briefly before adding, "Why should I care about that family? He never cared about mine." Martha's plea for respectful conversation interrupted my thoughts. "I've asked you to speak to me like an adult. Your choice of words isn't helping." A smile crept across my face, clearly unsettling her. "Martha, I am trying to improve the situation. If you're unhappy with my language, feel free to get up and leave. "I promise I won't stop you," I responded, fully aware she wouldn't budge. She finally asked, "How long have you known?" Instead of answering directly, I reached for the props I had placed in front of me beforehand. Picking up a copy of the anonymous material, I pushed it across the table. Martha took out the short letter and photo, examining them before looking at the envelope's postmark. 3 years? You've known for 3 years, and you didn't do anything. I chuckled softly. Believe me, Martha, I've done plenty. I had a 4-hour meeting at work today to prepare for this conversation. I've had 3 whole years to prepare. As I finished the sentence, I noticed a flicker of concern cross Martha's face, but I chose not to dwell on it just yet. For instance, I continued, we haven't been intimate since I discovered your affair. Besides the occasional peck on the cheek, we rarely have any physical contact. It has been 3 long years since we shared a loving embrace, yet you have failed to notice. I couldn't help but think that perhaps your interest in intimacy had waned. Martha commented, chuckling and earning a belly laugh from me. Oh, Martha, I haven't lost interest in sex. Just in sex with you, I replied jokingly, wearing a grin from ear to ear. Martha took a moment to process my words before speaking again. Have you truly gone 3 years without any sexual activity? She asked, her surprise evident. I couldn't help but continue the playful banter. Well, 3 years without sex with you, my dear. As for the rest, I can assure you, I've had my fair share. Martha seemed stunned, sinking back into her chair. I pressed on. The difference lies in the fact that I have undeniable evidence of your questionable activities. Unfortunately for you, the same cannot be said for any allegations against me, Chris. I still love you, and I always have. Any encounters I've had with Michael meant nothing. They were merely a means of stress relief, especially after you decided to withhold intimacy from me. Don't even go there, Martha. This weekly 3-year affair of yours is entirely your doing. Don't you dare try to turn it around and blame me, I retorted firmly. Martha took a full minute to compose herself before resuming the conversation. Nevertheless, she persisted. Regardless, I still love you, and I know deep down you love me too. I shook my head solemnly, contradicting her belief. You're mistaken, Martha. Over the course of 3 years, you've consistently lied to me. You've broken our wedding vows and betrayed my trust. You've degraded and humiliated me in unimaginable ways. Any love I once felt has long since faded. In fact, I no longer even like you. Martha couldn't contain her tears any longer and hastily got up, fleeing the room. I made no attempt to chase after her, as I knew she would return. And when she did, I suspected it would be with a vengeance. True to my intuition, Martha returned wearing jeans and a blouse. She took a seat and poured herself a glass of wine from the bottle I had left on her end of the table. Chris, it's time you reconsider your position. I have a formidable team on my side. With the assistance of a skilled divorce attorney, you will lose a significant portion of your assets. I know Sharon Brown is a competent lawyer, but I've already discovered some glaring errors in the petition she prepared. If we fail to reach an agreement on how we can move forward, I will unleash my team upon you, Martha threatened, her frustration mounting. Yet, I couldn't help but continue smiling broadly. That's where our teams differ, Martha. Yours will launch their offensive tomorrow morning, whereas mine has been silently and methodically executing my plan over the past 3 years. Your team begins the battle, but mine has already emerged victorious. I suggest you take my word on the fact that you love me, although I'm unsure how that's possible considering the deceit that has consumed the last 3 years of our relationship. Still, I'll accept your proclamation of love. However, I can almost guarantee that by the time our divorce is finalized, you will despise me. The irony is that everything you will hate me for has already transpired. You just don't know it yet. Martha shouted, "You'll never be able to turn our children against me." I calmly responded, "I've never intended to turn our children against you. I haven't even spoken to them yet. I plan to call them over the weekend, along with our parents and siblings. I will inform them that I filed for divorce due to your long-term affair. I will tell them that I expect them to treat you respectfully, and hopefully, they will maintain a relationship with you. However, the decision will be entirely up to them, and if anyone doubts the extent of your betrayal, I'll gladly provide them with the evidence I have. I suspect you wouldn't want anyone else to see it, so you might want to consider confessing to your affair." Martha despised losing, and she was beginning to grasp the reality that she was falling further behind with every exchange. Instead of backing down, she erupted, "I'm going to take your company away from you." Unbeknownst to her, the first phase of my dismantling of Martha had just commenced. She expected her threat against my firm to be her trump card. Yet, I threw it right back at her. "My company. Which company might that be?" I feigned ignorance, and she looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and contempt. "Precision engineering. I'm going to take it over." My amusement lingered for a moment before I responded. "Oh, Martha, don't you recall? We actually sold PE to the Swedes 2 years ago. And you should know, it's illegal for you to take over a company that is considered family property without my consent. Although I must admit, you did grant me an extensive power of attorney for all matters related to the company. Conveniently enough, your own firm drafted the document. I used that power of attorney to ensure the sale went through smoothly and invested the funds in offshore accounts, just as we do each year. You personally signed our family's tax documents, which explicitly documented the sale and the subsequent movement of funds. Finding that money now would be quite the challenge, wouldn't it?" Martha sat there, shell-shocked, her mouth agape like a fish blowing bubbles. Leaving the room, I made my way upstairs to the guest room. After locking the door, I finally allowed myself to succumb to tears. The next morning, at precisely 3 o'clock, my alarm went off. I got out of bed, took a shower, and headed to the airport to fly to Florida. In anticipation of a lonely life, I bought an apartment on Clearwater Beach, opposite Tampa. That fateful night, I shocked Martha. I expected that Martha and her legal team would spend several weeks studying legal documents and financial statements to understand that almost $34 million from the sale of PE had never fallen under the jurisdiction of an American bank, and therefore would not be part of the division of property in the divorce. It was really a shock. Judging by the long-standing family tradition, the second part of my plan was supposed to come true 5 weeks after Thanksgiving. In her childhood, Martha was very close to her maternal grandmother, Edith. Edith regularly arranged a date just for the two of them. Over the years, Martha has taken on these responsibilities. In recent years, Martha traveled to Portland, Maine, once a month to visit her grandmother and spend time with her in the room where she was receiving care. They went to lunch, and if Edith was feeling well, visited them all. The family tradition, started by Edith and continued by Martha for the last 15 years, was to exhibit an almost 175-year-old family Christmas market. Every year, on the Friday after Thanksgiving, Martha visited our local bank and took the 24 pieces that make up the fare out of a large safe box. Each figure was packed in a velvet box. My children and I chose 2 12-foot-tall Christmas trees and spent the whole day decorating our house. The centerpiece of our decoration was a Christmas market placed on a straw table standing between 2 trees. 3 rows of poinsettias were placed in front of the table to protect the priceless figures from the climbing hands of the guests. With all the decorations installed, Martha stood in front of her favorite fare. Tears invariably flowed down her cheeks. Indeed, during the New Year holidays, Martha cried every day looking at the fair. She confessed that it was her happy place, which reminded her of all the joys in her life. The Christmas market filled her with past and present memories. We left the decorations until the last day before returning to work after the New Year holidays. On this day, we removed all the decorations. Martha carefully placed each figure in a box and placed them on the kitchen table. The next day, she stopped by the bank on her way to work and put the boxes back in the safe deposit box for safekeeping until next year. Most of my plan to divorce Martha didn't take 3 years. All but one element was completed in the first year. Over the past 3 years, I have been planning a business trip for the beginning of the new year. My flight took off around noon. so instead of going to the office, I started my day at the home office. For the first 2 years, Martha and I had breakfast together on our first day at work. I helped her carry the packed figures to her car. She wished me luck and kissed me on the cheek as she left for the bank before going to work. Last year, the plan finally changed a little bit, just as I expected. As we were getting dressed, Martha asked, "Chris, can you do me a favor?" I looked across our bedroom and answered, "Of course. What happened?" She replied, "I expect a lot of work when I come in this morning. Do you have time to take the pieces to the bank before heading to the airport?" I thought for a second and smiled. This is going to be pretty easy. I'll take care of it. When I figured out what had happened, Martha's text arrived shortly before noon on the Friday immediately after Thanksgiving. "Martha, where the hell are my pieces?" "You're here." I laughed so hard that the coffee came out of my nose when Kate, a 38-year-old neighbor walking past my bedroom, saw this stream of coffee. She laughed too. "Do you need to reply to this message, or can you talk for a while before I have to leave?" Kate took a quick shower, got dressed, kissed me, and went home. After she left, I checked my phone and found several text messages and calls from Martha, her relatives, and our children. Although I didn't want to talk to Martha, I decided it would be much easier to call her than to talk to everyone else. Martha hissed when she picked up the phone. "Chris, why did it take so long to answer?" "I was leaving one of the neighbors." Martha calmed down a little and continued, "I want my fare, and I want it now. Of course, go to the bank and take it. Chris, I know you didn't return them to the bank last year. The last record of accessing the safe box was when I took out the figures last Christmas." Before she could continue, I asked, "Why didn't you return them last year?" "As you are well aware, Chris, you had agreed to take the items to the bank for me. Please, I ask you to give my possessions back." "I apologize, Martha, but you are mistaken. I distinctly remember placing the boxes into the trunk of your car before you left for work, just like I have done every other year." "What exactly are you trying to do, Martha?" Through her tears, Martha sobbed, "Oh my God, why are you doing this to me? I understand you are angry, but why be so cruel? It's astonishing how you refuse to take any responsibility for your messed up life." I bid goodbye to Martha and hung up the phone. I decided to reach out to everyone who had called, delivering the same message that Martha was causing problems as our court date approached. I wasn't sure if anyone believed me, but I was confident that no one had evidence that I possessed the figurines. Our divorce was finalized 14 months after I filed. Martha fought me at every step, raising numerous obstacles in the process. She even involved the police and insurance investigators regarding the disappearance of her nativity scene. My only statement on the matter was, to the best of my recollection, I placed all 24 boxes of figurines into the trunk of Martha's car. I would have been astonished if anyone believed me, but they couldn't prove that I took Martha's family heirloom. Martha and I crossed paths a few times each year at our children's events. We showed each other respect but maintained our distance. 14 years after our divorce, I discovered that Martha had been battling an aggressive form of breast cancer. As her days were coming to an end, my daughter contacted me and requested that I visit her mother. The following day, as I entered her hospice room, I found Martha drowsy. I watched her for nearly an hour, struggling to hold back tears on multiple occasions. Lost in my thoughts and memories, Martha startled me. Looking up at her smiling face, I smiled back. "You were right, you know," she said. Bewildered, I asked what she meant. Her smile flickered as she spoke. "You told me that my love for you would turn into hatred by the end of our divorce, after all the terrible things I did to you and our family. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I hated you for a long time." "Right back at you, Martha," I replied, and together we shared a chuckle. "Chris, do you still hate me?" she asked. I pondered for a moment and responded, "No, hate requires too much energy. I simply didn't have the strength after a while." "And you?" Martha nodded in agreement even before I finished speaking. "I agree. Hate isn't worth the effort after a while." We engaged in conversation for nearly 2 hours. As I neared the end of recounting a cherished memory from our children's early years, I looked up to find that Martha had fallen asleep. Initially, I contemplated leaving, but I reconsidered, realizing that this would likely be the last time I would see her alive. After Martha woke from her hour-long nap, we continued to reminisce and laugh together like fools. At that moment, our son Brian, his wife Sue, and our 3 grandchildren walked in. Brian's expression made it clear that he was pleased I came to visit his mother. I didn't stay much longer, wanting Brian's family to have Martha's undivided attention. I said my goodbyes, gently kissed Martha, and turned towards the door. "Chris, can I ask you a favor?" Martha requested. I nodded, giving her my agreement. She looked at Brian and asked if they could have a moment of privacy. Brian and Sue swiftly collected their children and made their exit. Once alone, Martha spoke. "I would like Brian's family and Rose's family to alternate displaying the nativity scene during Christmas. Could you help make that happen?" On Black Friday 2018, while many families were busy hunting for deals at the local mall, my family spent the day at my daughter's house. Rose, her brother Brian, his family, and I devoted the day to decorating the house. We adorned each window with candles and wreaths, lit up the yard's bushes with holiday lights, and added Christmas-themed knickknacks to every room on the first floor. We all agreed that the centerpiece of the decorations was in Rose's family room. 2 massive 12-foot trees were tastefully decorated, with a straw-covered table placed between them. 3 rows of poinsettias formed a protective barrier in front of the table, where the 24 pieces of Martha's nativity scene were carefully arranged. Before leaving for the evening, Brian, Rose, and I took one last look at the figurines. As memories flooded back, tears streamed down my face, recalling Martha's tears as she stood before the display, proclaiming it to be her happy place. This story serves as a reminder that authentic conflict resolution necessitates time, self-reflection, and a willingness to compromise. Story 2. After nearly a year of friendship, I realized that my wife was the woman I wanted to explore a deeper connection with and potentially spend the rest of my life with. So I took the leap and asked her to be my girlfriend, to which she happily agreed. As we started dating, our love for each other soared to new heights. We were the epitome of a perfect couple, always in sync with matching outfits, sharing experiences, and showering each other with thoughtful gifts. My financial stability allowed me to pamper her without hesitation, as I took pleasure in her happiness. After a year of dating, she made the decision to move in with me. At the time, I traveled frequently, and my spacious and comfortable apartment seemed like a logical place for her to stay. It didn't make sense to lock up my place and continue paying rent elsewhere. Since we had no immediate plans for children and had developed a sense of belonging in our neighborhood, there was no reason for us to move out. Throughout our journey, my wife forged strong bonds with our neighbors, fostering true friendships that only grew stronger after our marriage. Our first few years together were filled with love, respect, and bliss. We enjoyed hosting small gatherings for our neighbors, embracing the sense of community that surrounded us. Even amidst my business trips, the thought of cheating on my wife never crossed my mind. I kept her picture close to my heart, both in my wallet and in my car, symbolizing the depth of my commitment to her. However, everything changed one fateful day when I returned from a business trip. I noticed a subtle change in my wife's behavior. She seemed on edge, different somehow. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Initially, I suspected that she had accidentally broken a treasured family heirloom, but upon inspection, the vase remained intact. To assuage my growing suspicion, I discreetly accessed the footage from our home's security camera, only to discover a shocking truth. The videos from the past 4 days, during my absence, had been irrevocably deleted by my wife. The missing footage raised my suspicions further, but I didn't confront her right away, knowing that she would try to defend herself. Instead, I embarked on a discreet mission to recover the deleted files. To my astonishment, what I uncovered were explicit videos showcasing the affair between my wife and our new neighbor. someone we had warmly welcomed into our lives without any inkling of his deceit. My wife's betrayal enraged me, surpassing any feelings of heartbreak I might have expected. I yearned to hurt her, but I resisted the impulse to do something foolish. Coincidentally, before my trip, I had planned a neighborhood barbecue to introduce our unfaithful neighbor to the community, not knowing of his affair with my wife. As the pieces fell into place, I formulated a plan for the perfect revenge. Keeping my newfound knowledge secret from my wife, I played the role of the oblivious husband, acting as if everything was normal. Days later, at our planned gathering, after everyone had indulged in delicious food and drinks, we gathered to watch a movie together. However, instead of the film they anticipated, I showed them a movie they would never forget. With immense satisfaction, I played the recovered videos of my wife's infidelity, capturing the attention of everyone present. The shock on my wife's face was indescribable, her eyes nearly popping out of their sockets as the weight of her actions sunk in. The shame she wore on her face was undeniable. Meanwhile, the new neighbor's girlfriend unleashed her fury upon him, ultimately breaking up with him on the spot. As my wife broke down in tears, desperately turning to our neighborhood friends for support and forgiveness, I couldn't help but revel in a mixture of vindication and heartache. The betrayal had marred our once beautiful union, leaving scars that would take time to heal. However, the disappointment from everyone was palpable. They coldly ignored her and didn't utter a single word after witnessing the incident unfold. As I informed them that the barbecue was officially over, they all hurriedly left. Once the last guest was gone, my wife couldn't hold back her tears and pleaded, "Please, it's not what you think. Allow me to explain." Her words fueled my fury, prompting me to lash out and forbid her from ever setting foot in my house again. I cruelly informed her that the divorce papers were already in the works, and soon she would be served by my lawyer. I callously discarded some of her belongings and slammed the door shut. Publicly humiliating her did offer a slight sense of satisfaction, but it paled in comparison to the heartbreak that consumed me. I had loved her deeply and had envisioned spending the rest of my life with her. However, I never saw her again after that day, and even the new neighbor swiftly departed. It seemed they recognized that their actions had irreparably damaged their standing with our community. Eventually, we finalized our divorce, and I sincerely wished her a miserable life. This happened to me 5 years ago, and although I have moved on, the fear of betrayal still gnaws at me whenever I think about my current girlfriend being unfaithful. I strive to guard myself from such pain. But I understand that not all women deserve to be judged solely based on the mistakes of the past. Despite the difficulty, it is important to overcome the trauma of infidelity and prevent it from haunting future relationships. Not all individuals are the same, and not everyone will repeat past misdeeds. Seeking professional help can be a crucial step towards healing. This is the story of when my wife and I first met in college. We immediately connected and became inseparable, always ready for new adventures. After graduation, we tied the knot and began building the life of our dreams. We even welcomed a beautiful child into our lives and worked relentlessly to provide her with the best opportunities. Fast forward a few years, and everything seemed perfect. We had a lovely home, wonderful friends, and fulfilling careers. Plus, our daughter's music teacher claimed she possessed an innate talent for the piano. Encouraging her passion for music was a no-brainer, so we decided to find a piano instructor for her after-school lessons. A neighbor recommended a recent music school graduate who had taught his son guitar, so we hired him. He was a young man struggling to pay his bills, and I found myself liking him. Since my wife worked part-time, she was often present during the lessons. He would come by every Monday and Wednesday, usually leaving by the time I arrived home. However, after a few weeks, I noticed a change in my wife. She grew distant, her smiles appeared forced, and something felt off. Perhaps I initially dismissed it as work stress, but as the behavior continued, I grew concerned. The first suspicious incident occurred when I witnessed her receive a text message from the piano instructor. She hastily picked up her phone, shielded it from my view, and then left the room. It was an undeniable red flag. Rather than immediately jumping to conclusions and accusing her, I assumed the role of a detective. I began coming home earlier to observe their interactions. I started sensing an air of secrecy, noticing long and seemingly intimate conversations, as well as lingering glances. Their body language surpassed a professional tutor-student relationship. My gut instinct told me there was more to this story. I needed concrete evidence to prove it. So I discreetly installed small security cameras in strategic locations, one overlooking the piano in the living room, another in the kitchen, and one in our bedroom. Soon enough, the cameras captured damning footage. As clear as daylight, I watched my wife allow the instructor in, witness him teach our daughter for an hour, send our daughter to her room to play, and then lead the instructor into the kitchen. There, they shared kisses and intimate moments, thinking they were alone. That was the confirmation I needed. Divorce became inevitable. It was the last thing I desired, but I couldn't ignore or excuse her betrayal. Hurt, anger, and confusion consumed me in the face of her actions. Perhaps what I did next was not the right path, but I felt an urge for some form of revenge. We had a planned dinner with friends and neighbors, a significant occasion for all of us. The children were left under a babysitter's care next door, and we adults were supposed to unwind and enjoy a few drinks. I believed it was the perfect moment to reveal the truth that I had discovered about my wife. Prior to the dinner, I made sure to extend an invitation to our piano instructor. He initially attempted to decline, but I insisted that he come. Eventually, he accepted when the prospect of gaining new clients seemed promising. Amidst the joyful atmosphere of the dinner, I rose from my seat and raised my glass for a toast. Addressing my wife directly, I expressed my relief at having finally unearthed her true character. I confessed that enduring another 20-something years of marriage with her would have been nothing short of torturous. The look of hurt and confusion in her eyes pierced me deeply. I went on to explain that I could not bear the thought of being married to a cheater. The room fell silent as she stared at me, completely baffled by my accusations. Thus, I decided to provide further elaboration, divulging the details of her illicit affair with the piano instructor. I retrieved the incriminating video from my phone and held it aloft for everyone present to witness. The shocking revelation left everyone in utter disbelief, their gazes transfixed upon me, as if I had sprouted an extra head. Before long, individuals were quick to depart, leaving my wife and I alone in her home. She implored me to explain how I had come to uncover her secret, to which I obliged by recounting the entire sequence of events. Tearfully, she admitted that the affair had only recently begun, and she never intended for it to escalate to such a point. With a heavy heart, I reiterated my earlier declaration, assuring her that my words held true and advising her to anticipate divorce papers. A few days later, the neighbor who had recommended the piano instructor reached out to apologize, blaming himself in part for the unfortunate outcome. He confessed to terminating the instructor's services and informing others he had recommended about the situation. He fully expected to lose those professional connections as well. In an attempt to maintain a sense of calm and normalcy for the sake of our child, I chose to let my wife keep the house, despite the fact that she still had substantial financial obligations to fulfill independently, without any spousal support. We managed to reach an agreement regarding custody and pledged to be as amicable as possible, solely for the well-being of our daughter. Your tale of infidelity and divorce underscores the intricate nature of personal relationships and the paramount importance of effective communication. The decision to expose the affair publicly, leading to subsequent divorce, represents the emotional turmoil that accompanies such circumstances. Simultaneously, your unwavering commitment to your child's welfare amidst such adversity is truly commendable.